Let me tell you something that changed how I approach every single brow lamination I do. It's not about the technique itself, it's about being able to actually see what you're working with. And that's exactly what makes the ZOLA lamination system stand out. Instead of clear compositions that leave you guessing where you've applied and where you haven't, you get color. Pink for the lifting step, blue for the neutralizer. Once you work with that system, you can never go back. Today, I'm combining it with brow tinting, and I want to walk you through every decision I'm making along the way. Before anything touches the brow, the first thing to assess is the client. This particular client has naturally thick, dense brow hairs, which is a gift because you have material to work with. But dense hairs also mean the lamination composition needs to be distributed very thoroughly down to every single strand. The skin here is also darker, which directly affects the tinting stage. With darker skin tones, the dye leaves a stronger imprint on the skin, so the entire approach to layering and saturation needs to be adjusted. Standard brush it on and wait doesn't work here. Protection first. The ZOLA x Taya Makarenko SAVE Skin Cream goes around the entire brow perimeter before anything else. On darker skin especially, any composition residue that touches unprotected skin will leave visible staining. This cream creates a barrier, and it's one of those steps that beginners often skip, and then wonder why their client has a faint pink outline around the brows afterward. It takes 30 seconds and saves you a lot of explanation at the end. Always use it. The first composition, step 1, the lifting formula, is pink. And this is where that color technology becomes your best tool. You apply it and immediately see, did I reach the inner corner? Are the tail hairs fully covered? Is there excess pooling under the arch? With a clear product, you're working blind. With pink, you're working with information. Apply it from the bulb of the hair toward the tip, in the direction the hair will be laid down. You want the composition inside the hair structure, not just on the surface. A flat angled brush lets you press the product in rather than just painting over. Timing step 1 depends on hair condition and texture. Thick, healthy hairs like these need adequate time for the lifting formula to soften the internal bonds. Rushing this stage is the most common reason brow lamination results don't hold. The hairs weren't given enough time to accept the new direction. The range is 5 to 10 minutes, but always read the hair, not just the clock. When the hairs feel slightly softened and pliable rather than springy, you're in the right zone. Once step 1 has done its work, you remove it and move immediately to step 2, the blue neutralizer. Here's the detail I think is genuinely brilliant about this system. The neutralizer only activates where the lifting composition was present. So if you missed a section, step 2 won't fix it. Step 1 opens the bonds, you shape the hair, step 2 closes and locks everything in the new position. Remove it cleanly and you'll already see the lamination result. Hairs lying flat, direction held, structure preserved. Now the lamination is essentially done, but this session gets more interesting because we're adding tinting on top. Combining these two procedures requires a specific mindset. You've just softened the hair internally, which means it's also more receptive to pigment right now. That's an advantage in terms of color absorption, but it also means you need to use less dye than you think. Overloading the hair with tint after lamination results in uneven, patchy color. Less is genuinely more here. The technique I use is layering, and it starts with the areas that naturally receive the least pigment, the tips and the apex of the arch. These zones always end up lighter because the hair there is finer and grows at a different angle. By starting there, you ensure even saturation without drowning the thicker base hairs. Apply a thin layer, let it develop, assess, and add only where needed. Build up, don't flood. Working both brows simultaneously requires being precise about the time difference between sides. If you start the right brow 2 minutes before the left, that's 2 minutes of extra development on one side. With darker skin, that difference can show in the final result. I keep both brows at almost exactly the same processing stage, so the final reveal is symmetrical and consistent. Saturation control is where most tinting mistakes happen. A brow that looks slightly underdone in the chair often deepens nicely once the client leaves and the color fully sets. A brow that looks perfect in the chair can end up too heavy by the next morning. The indicator I use: look at the skin imprint. When you apply dye near the base of the hairs, some deposits on the skin underneath. That imprint tells you exactly how saturated the result will be once it fades from the hair. On darker skin, you want the skin imprint barely visible, soft, not dense. After the first round of dye, step back and look at both brows together, not individually. Assess where the color story feels incomplete. Usually it's a small zone at the inner corner where the hair grows chaotically, or a sparse patch along the lower edge. Fill exactly those zones with minimal product using the tip of the brush. Precision over coverage. You're correcting, not repainting. By the time you're doing final accents, you're really just checking your own work. Is the tail consistent with the arch? Is the inner corner too heavy or too light? Does the overall impression read as natural, or does it look applied? The goal with tinted and laminated brows is always that the client looks polished even without makeup, like her own brows, but their best possible version. The last technical step that's mandatory but often skipped: washing off the root zone. After tinting, the very base of the brow hairs holds more pigment than the rest of the length. If you leave that, you get a sharp, solid root line that looks artificial. Gently remove the color from just the first millimeter of the root, not from the hairs themselves, and that single step creates the soft, blended, slightly ombre effect that looks genuinely natural. Final cleanup is methodical. Cotton pad removes residue. Any dye that migrated past the protective cream gets cleaned. The hair clips come off, and then you see the complete result in full context for the first time. That moment never gets old. There's something about watching brows go from their resting state to this, defined, shaped, colored, natural looking, that reminds me why this work is worth doing carefully. What I want you to take from today is that the ZOLA color-coded lamination system is a professional tool, not a gimmick. It gives you real-time visual feedback at every critical stage. Combined with thoughtful tinting using the layering approach, it produces exactly the kind of result clients describe as low maintenance, but always put together. That balance is what good brow work feels like. Thank you for watching. And if you have questions about the technique or the products, drop them in the comments.